So today I get to introduce you to a new friend of mine. His name is Jack White. He's a partner and owner in a law firm, FH+H, here in the Washington, D.C. area. Jack just impresses me to no end, little intimidating. And, when we get to talking, just changes my life just by the conversation we get to have. He graduated from West Point. He's got three beautiful kids who I think I'm going to get to meet in a little while because they're coming to sell Girl Scout cookies. He served as a minister in several churches in the South and also in the urban West. So you're starting to get a picture of a very, very successful and passionate man who's committed to excellence in everything he does. He's committed to his spirituality. He's committed to his family. And I wanted to share Jack with you because I have an interesting relationship with excellence, with success, with achievement. And in talking to Jack, I get so inspired to do more, do better, and bring that into the world. So that's why Jack is on the show. Jack, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
So you and I got to talk, and after the initial introductions to each other and figuring out who we are, what we do for a living, and all that, we started talking about family, and we started talking about life, we started talking about spirituality, and it really, for me, moved me into what's possible in the business world. You're a lawyer, and you've said that being a lawyer is your ministry. So you bring your spirituality into everything that you do. You bring your caring for people into everything you do, and that's not usual, right? Would you say that that's
I think that's fair.
A different take?
I think that's fair, but I caveat that a little because I'm not overt with that. I don't bring a Bible to a client consult. I don't open uh, a meeting with opposing counsel in prayer. Uh, Rather, my demeanor and the way that I try to carry myself in the execution of my vocation, I want that to exhibit my values. I want it to demonstrate what's important to me, such that after the fact, somebody might someday question, hey, what is it about that interaction? What is there about that interaction that I might want to pull a nugget from? I've found, Mark, in my learning experiences, particularly in academia, the best lessons that I ever learned were not out of a textbook. The best lessons were watching people's lives. And I want to, I don't know that I do all the time, but I want to exhibit that. For example, when I was in law school, I had a professor who knew securities cold. He had worked for the SEC. He had run the securities practice for a large national law firm for years. He would assign us cases, and then he would come to class. We would have read the cases. He would close the book, and he would just tell stories about his experience as a securities attorney. I learned more from him that way than I did actually reading the cases. Similarly, I want, uh, I hope that my life can be a lesson to other people more than any sermon out of a pulpit.
Sure, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because that wasn't how the conversation started. It's what I took from the conversation, it's what I gleaned from the conversation, but it was who you are, who all of that in the background presents in the world,
Mm.
and in the excellence, in the way you dress, in the way you speak to people, in the way you treat people, and the way people feel around you, and then your success. So let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
What do you think drove you early in your career that brought you to West Point and into the military? What was the driving force?
Uh, I had ambitious parents who knew how to make ambition contagious. Uh, they knew how to create that feeling when you've done your best and not necessarily won, but you've done your best, and that joy and pride in performance, uh, and pride in accomplishment. And then once you taste that, you want it again, and you want it again. And my parents knew how to teach that, and and it bled over into various areas. Athletic undertakings, academic undertakings, public speaking, interpersonal interactions. Uh, even when I would volunteer at uh, at a center for older people, I wanted to be the volunteer who had the most hours singing to the older people because I just felt that pride and accomplishment.
So, so it wasn't a should, it wasn't a beaten over your head kind of thing. There was something that they were able to instill in you that was more innate, uh, a more internal drive rather than a prove yourself kind of thing. Would you say?
I think that's accurate. I think that's accurate. I think also though, Mark, there was a an element of faith-based teachings that guided that. I learned the first verses that I remember having learned came out of Luke, from those to whom much is given, much is required. My parents were raised in the segregated South, and then they had moved to Los Angeles. But being where they were, coming from whence they came, they felt that they had plenty. Uh, and they felt that much was required of them. And they passed that along. So,
So can you elaborate on that? What does it mean that much is required of you?
well, if, coming from a home with two parents, uh, and the ability to actually be able to sit at a table and do your homework. Uh, everybody doesn't have that. Some people from a very early age have to get out there and start working, or they have to do the homemaking as children. Uh, I, my parents were not wealthy, but I had the luxury of being able to go home from school and sit at a table and do my homework. Now, I appreciated that early on. And so I had been given much. Much was required. Do your homework, uh, perform. Uh, I tripped and fell and had some acumen at academic undertakings. Well, I had a duty to do the best that I could. Uh, and that happened over and over again. I had a proclivity to toward putting together a coherent sentence, or persuading an audience, moving people. Well, develop that, work with it. From those to whom much is given, much is required. Uh, if my gifts were elsewhere, then the requirements of me would have been elsewhere. But I feel like I learned early on to recognize what few gifts I had and exploit them, do the best that I could to make them for the better good of the communities in which I could serve.
How does that lead you to West Point?
Uh, I watched, as a preacher's kid, my father interact with people from other countries. I got to see other countries, and I got to see how good we have it in our country. Um, some people think it's corny, but I fancied myself early on a patriot. I like that God saw fit to make me born an American. And so I wanted to serve. I didn't know what that meant. Uh, I didn't come from a family of veterans. So I learned that there was a difference between enlisted and an officer. Well, how do you become an officer? You can go through ROTC or a service academy. Well, what's a service academy? And then I couldn't tell the difference between them because I didn't have a whole lot of experience. But I figured the first one must be the best. Uh, and that was West Point. And now I know much more, and I have no regrets about the choice that I made.
So you graduate from West Point, you excel in the military, and you have a career now as a lawyer. You raise a family. So let's bring us all the way to current day. You have people in your life who have not been raised the way you have, who have not been instilled with what you have been instilled with. And a lot of, for me, I was crash and burn quite a bit. Like my journey to success was filled with a lot of potholes. Some of them I dug myself, right? Because I didn't have that structure and that support to and actually, who knows if I had that, I might have rebelled. So I don't really know. So I'm not going to blame that on anything. But so now you have people who work with you, who work for you. You help other people. You're out in your community. How do you impart what you have and what you know to people who haven't found that way to excellence, haven't found that way to striving for some sort of ambition?
That's a good question. And you know what, Mark? That is something that I work on every day because I, first, I don't know that I have enough to impart yet, but I don't know at every critical juncture what I'm supposed to do with what it is that I have. What I do know is how to put one foot in front of the other. For example, if I meet a guy who is a good and energetic person who says, hey, let's do a podcast together, then I can say yes. Uh,
Oh, am I that good and
though,
energetic guy? That's so fun. All right.
similarly, uh, a mutual friend of ours from a club that we're both a member of knew a young kid who's a recent college graduate who is having difficulty finding employment. Well, look, I can sit down with that kid over lunch on my dime and just listen to him, listen to his story, listen to where he might be paused in his progress, share with him my story. You know, the stories of people who have come before us uh, can often be more helpful than any type of academic uh, or specific guidance. Just hearing the stories. Uh,
So what story was relevant to this young man?
to him,
Yeah. So you told him a story. What story was relevant for what he brought to you?
so his situation was that he had graduated from college, but was not finding a job in the field where he got his degree. My story to him was the story of my coming to the firm where I am now. And I told him in the law, I had practiced a linear way. There are certain things that I had done. And then I heard about this opportunity at the firm where I practice today, FH+H. And I visited with the firm, and what they did was not consistent with the line of development of my practice, but who they were was consistent with who I am. And so I gave it a shot. And the point of what I conveyed to him in much longer fashion was, you know, don't be so rigid in what you expect to find. Let God take a little bit of leeway and take you where he wants you to be. Because I have no doubt that right here, right now at this firm is where I'm supposed to be for a variety of reasons. It's good uh, for what I can do for my clients. It's good for what I can do in the communities that matter to me. It's good for my family. I know it's where God wants me to be. It is absolutely not where I would have imagined myself being, but it's where I'm supposed to be.
So what you did was you looked for people who, rather than looking for the specific opportunity, when you found people who were aligned with you, you said, this is something to take a second look at.
That's right. That's right. And more importantly, I had an open mind to let God show me something that I might not have looked for otherwise.
What else did you tell this guy? Because you sell yourself short.
I told him to be patient. I told him to be patient. I think that, we live in a time where the whole concept of delayed gratification no longer exists. You know, we want everything and we want it now. Um, I told him, take your time. The kid, he's 22 years old. Now, I remember 22 and I remember how anxious I was. But taking a moment to breathe doesn't hurt. Enjoy the moment that you're in. Uh, Mark, I don't want to preach to you, but there is a notion that I've been introduced to over the past couple of days. When God was asked, who is he says, I am. I am. He's in the present. He's not in the past, because then he would have said, I was.
I was.
And if you think about the past, then you're encumbered by regrets. He's not in the future, because then he would have said, I will be. And if you think about the future all the time, then you're encumbered by fear. He says, I am. So what I said to the kid was just be present, be where you are, and enjoy the moment. Enjoy the fact that you're 22 and can be with your friends. And, he has a mother who he takes care of. Enjoy the fact that you can do that and that she's still alive. Enjoy the moment.
So there's a paradigm shift there of I have to take care of my mother too. I get to take care of my mother.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. It's funny. My son, my younger son, is 20, and he's chomping at the bit because some of his friends have gone to college and have figured things out, right? Or they think they figured things out.
Sure.
Next 4 years is I go to college, I party, I have a good time, right? Then we'll figure it out. He didn't, and he took a gap year, went to Israel, and now he's coming back. So he's got a lot of time to contemplate, like, what are his next moves? And when I was his age, it was all drugs and alcohol, right? And it was really bad. And I keep imparting on him that you're not drinking in excess, you're not doing drugs, right? You're taking some classes at community college, just so that your mind is engaged, right? You're working 2 jobs. You're exploring your spirituality. This is the most perfect. You are more on point than anybody I know. If you take what you just said, the I am, this present moment, he's more on point than anybody I know, because he's just in the moment, looking at the blank canvas, saying, where do I put my brush next? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And being present and capable of absorbing what's occurring at the moment helps us to be better equipped for the future when we get there. Oswald Chambers, in his book My Utmost for His Highest, which is a collection of devotionals to be read over the course of a year, he has one that talks about peaks and valleys, hills and valleys. And the essence of what he communicates is that life is not meant to be lived on the peaks. in the valleys where we get to look and see what the heights can be, that's where we live life. So that when we get to the peaks, we can look out over the valleys that we pass through with greater appreciation. And I think there's some truth to that.
It's beautiful. So speaking of valleys, how do you deal with failure?
Hmm. Um, uh, differently under different circumstances. Uh, I embrace opportunities to learn. Um, and sometimes that's what failures are. Uh, I have had some that are doozies, and some that I've had, I'm still that happened long ago. I'm still in the process of learning from.
But so now but I just, how do you like, so I want to talk about the ones where you don't handle them well, right? Because a lot of us some failures we can roll off our backs. Some failures really hit our self-esteem. Some failures, just hit our viewpoints in the world. Tell me how, when you hit a failure that rocks your world, how do you find your way back? And if you'd be willing to share an example, that would be really cool. Yes, I just put you on the spot.
No, well, you're going to give me a moment to think on that.
I am.
All right. Years ago, uh, I had a representation that did not afford my client the outcome that I wanted to afford my client. Uh, Now, as an attorney, there are always factors that are beyond the representative's control. Uh, but I took that one as a failure because I I believed passionately in my client's cause, and I was not able to get for that client the outcome that they wanted. I It took me a while to deal with that one, but now that I have, and I can look back on it, I can do an autopsy on how I handled it. I let it hurt for a while, and I did not avoid letting it hurt. Then I parsed out what components of it were mine to own and what were not. The ones
After you sat down and felt the hurt,
after I felt the hurt,
so you didn't just go right to, let's get smart about this. You dealt with the pain of failing.
and it hurt, and I licked my wounds for a while. And when I say a while, we're talking years. And then I did an inventory of what was mine to own and what was not. And once I determined what was mine to own, I owned it. I figured out what to do differently. I figured out what to do better. Uh, I figured out attributes to jettison, uh, and tools that I needed to improve in the future. Um, the biggest part though was determining what to own and what was not mine to own. That was big for me because going through that process, I realized uh, I learned a lot going through the process of determining what was mine to say, hey, look, Jack, this was you. But what was mine to say, I got to let this go. That was not mine. It's not mine to own.
And how did that help you for future failures?
Because I know how to, now I can do it quicker. I can do the same thing, but quicker. And it won't take me as long.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So what, if you had one thing to leave with 30,000 people who are riveted to the speakers, what would you want to leave as your last word here?
Enjoy the moment that you're in. Live for today. Determine why you are where you are at the moment and get everything that you can from it.
I love that. Good. And that's good, bad, like whatever you judge the moment, you're here, you got here by making certain choices and decisions.
Sure.
Do some triage, right? And do some inventory on what got you here. And then you can be empowered for what's next.
And then you can be good for other people in the future. And better for yourself.
Mm.
Mark, I've enjoyed talking to you.
Jack, this was just incredible. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you and I connected. It changed me, and now I get to share you with my audience. To everybody else, thank you so much for spending time with us. I love you, and have a great rest of the day.